one. Welcome back to Buckle Up,
baby.
Buckle Up with Mike and Ami, episode
4. We did it.
We did it.
I always say 4 is the hardest one.
I think you say every single episode is the hardest one, and that's probably the truth.
I think it is true. I saw these guys, it's called the, I forgot the name now. They're these like 4 or 5 friends who sit around and do, talk about finance. They're really interesting. I found them on TikTok.
You forget the name?
Yeah, I'll try to remember
We'll put it in the description.
I forgot the name. They've done, I'm looking at their YouTube and they have like 30, 40 views per video and everything.
30, 40?
Yeah, well, not that many. They've
Okay.
done over 500 episodes. What keeps somebody going at that point? They just popped on TikTok. They have 40,000 followers.
And it's good?
It's really interesting. Really, they're really smart guys.
So that's interesting, but you got to admire the persistence.
Yeah. At the same time, though, imagine if we did this live and 40 to 50 people showed up every time. That would feel like a huge success.
Right.
It's not
Perspective.
Yeah. 50 people really watching you over 500 episodes is pretty good, but yeah, I don't know where the motivation comes after.
It's always interesting in the social media space how to quantify or process what a follower is versus an audience member who's like paying attention. You know, if you had 50 people in a room, that feels like something. If you could go anywhere in the world and 50 people would show up, I would say that that's impressive.
Right.
But when you see 50 followers, that looks nothing, or 50 views, it looks like nothing.
Right.
Because a view could be fleeting, it could be somebody who's not interested. So I get why there's a distinction.
Yeah.
But at the same time, good for them if they gotten onto TikTok. Maybe the type of content just wasn't performing well on YouTube. But if you're saying it was, because if I was going that long and wasn't getting anything, I wouldn't stop. I would just shift and try different approaches of maybe how to maximize or do things differently so that it's resonating or connecting in a way, because each platform functions a bit differently.
Oh, they say you got to do 500 before you get an idea.
Yeah, but you're saying that this stuff is good. It just has a small audience.
Yeah.
And you just admire the fact that even at 40 or 50.
Yeah.
So it puts it in, we're at episode 4.
It does,
And
yeah.
we're still going.
Yeah.
So, good for us.
Thanks everyone for watching, listening.
Yeah.
It's been exciting.
It is fun, and I, have a newfound respect for the podcast production space. You think you just sit here and have this conversation, but there's a lot more that goes on the back end that I do to make it work.
And it's all new because I started listening to podcasts seriously in 2009. So when I started working, like my first full-time jobs, I would sit and listen to podcasts.
Who were the
I would go to adamcarolla.com and listen. I'd go to Bill Simmons on ESPN. I would, there was no app. You'd find their pages and they had their podcasts on there and you press play.
I remember the days when the word podcast got thrown around. I feel like everybody pretended to know what it meant before we knew what a podcast was. It was one of those, it's a podcast.
Yeah, sure.
But you knew. You were early.
I was listening, real early. Adam Carolla, Bill Simmons, Tim Ferriss. But the video stuff, I'm still brand new because I never watch podcasts. So all this Instagram, TikTok, YouTube stuff is like, even for me, it's like a whole new world I'm descending into.
A whole new world. Just being on videos, the truth.
Also just being on it.
Yeah. And consuming content and consuming podcasts as a video.
Yeah, and I have a new appreciation for like the art form of cutting a reel. Cutting a TikTok. It's like, it's fun. And it's really, it's its own skill.
Yeah.
You can see how kids like in college now, people in college now are, like what comes intuitively to them is pretty alien to me at this point.
What was our version of that though? What was our generation's thing media-wise? Did we have something like that? Because I think what gave me the guilty conscience of like, I have no excuse to not be putting stuff out is when I was in high school, like I remember having this moment in sort of adulthood, mid-20s, where I flashed back to my high school self and I said, I remember when me and my friends used to just go around town being idiots, because Jackass was like a big thing. Remember Jackass in the 90s and 2000s was like the big part of the culture. That was like what the viral sort of Logan Paul prank Nelk Boys stuff is today. It was all Jackass back then. And we would all just look at it with like, oh, I wish I could do that with my friends. But of course, like there weren't cameras, there wasn't infrastructure, there wasn't YouTube. Like got lucky in that skater punk world that they got that attention and were able to get an audience. But I said, we'd make the best show if we could like put all this on.
Right.
And then we got all those tools and they were made available to us. And most of us, including myself, were doing nothing with it.
It's different being in high school though. It's if you had those tools in high school, it might have been different.
I might have used it then, but the point was, my excuse then was nothing existed, so we can't do it. We have our actual video cameras,
and no one had one,
and there's no place to put them. There's no website for this. What E-Bombs world, pre-YouTube? What are you gonna do with these videos? Then it all became available, and it's like the tech gods were like, "What's your excuse now?" And I was like, "I have none." Better start getting to work, and that's what we're doing. But you were saying something about the college kids, that they're naturally good at it, because that was interesting.
They just have a sense for what a TikTok video is supposed to be like. And I don't know, maybe like the equivalent for us would be like writing an email. You just sort of understand the formality of an email versus like sometimes your parents will write like, "Dear Ami, I'm writing you an email." Like, you know what I mean? Whereas we know how to do it. Whereas like
that's not
the video is just like they just know how. They just get it.
What they got, that generation is much cooler. Well, we can write a solid email, and that's self-defeating anyway. Because nowadays it's like put everything in the subject line and be brief. That's what you learn. Like formality in emails is bullshit.
Right.
Like
I'm still pretty formal actually.
Yeah. Does it work?
I sign off like best Michael usually.
Yeah, I do it best, but does it work? Is your email game effective in its like?
My email game is great.
If you're doing a cold email, what's like your? It's like hitting on someone.
I start with hope as well. Hope all as well. I hope you don't mind me reaching out unsolicited. ...
Unsolicited, you
I'll
say?
say that. Yeah.
That's a provocative word.
Yeah, it is provocative.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think it's good. My cold email game is pretty good, I think.
And people respond.
I love writing a good email.
Right.
A good email to hit that note between formality and being casual
and striking intrigue.
Yeah.
You know what I like? I found that over the years, the more formal it was, the more giveaway it was that I was a noob.
Yeah.
Because then it's like a little brown nosy and you're like a little intimidated, and people just smell that. And maybe you can be formal when you're experienced and they don't smell it because it doesn't come off that way. But I always found, especially in creative, like networking kind of strategies of reaching out to people, like going casual and humanizing everything was the most effective. I would open with something that had nothing to do with what I was reaching out for. It would be about family, life, kids, weather, anything. Hey, reaching out, I just moved to the West Coast actually, and I'm so, but I do miss the seasons because I haven't worn any of my best hoodies in 3 months. Somebody reads that and goes, yeah, me too, or whatever. Or I see that you're from Boston. I miss my days there in college, had the best time. Or I see you went to this school. Like, you do a little bit of research so it's not just generic.
Right.
But whenever I did that, it just humanized the whole experience. And my success rate in getting people to respond to me was much, much higher.
Right.
Now it's all Instagram DMs. It doesn't even emails anymore. I find Instagram DMs is probably the best way to get in touch with people. Like, send a voice note. And then people are like, oh, wow, somebody left me a message. Like, I do that kind of stuff. I do that kind of stuff all the time if I want to reach out to somebody cold. As opposed to, dear Zinjas, I am a recent graduate of the Berkeley College of Music.
I just had a feeling. I reached out to this artist. I'm trying to buy one of her prints for our bathroom because she makes these like gross little like creatures. She, like,
pictures of turds?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. And I reached out to him. I didn't get a response though.
But you're trying to buy something. That's probably.
I know, right? Yeah. I thought for sure she'll say something.
Send a voice note.
Yeah, maybe I will.
With that sexy little baritone.
Maybe I will.
Say, hey, listen, I want to watch you while I shit. So nice. I'm looking at a blank wall right now. Need something. Call me.
Just get blocked. I've been getting these WhatsApp messages. Did you get these?
From like a mass in mass?
The picture, it's always a picture of an Asian woman.
Yes.
An attractive Asian woman saying, hey, wrong name. How's the project going?
I got a bunch of those this past week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's Ling Ling. She's a Hangta. She's a friend of the podcast.
Oh, yeah. She's just reaching out the wrong numbers.
It's spam. Somebody's spamming WhatsApp and it's saying, hey,
what
Kevin.
What are they hoping to get out of it?
I bet you they're hoping that somebody thinks it's a real person saying, hi, I'm sorry, you have the wrong thing.
So that's
and
what
then they're like,
first. And then we had a conversation, but it didn't.
Change your.
I was like, where's the catch? What are you trying
Change your
to
bank password. Because the longer you leave WhatsApp open, it has a
My bank password.
your online banking password has a firewall that's connected to WhatsApp. Yeah.
Shut up.
No, but
what are they trying to get out of you? Like a credit card number?
I have no idea if it's like those India spam things where it's a bot of some kind that tries to keep you on the app so that it could access data while you're using it.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know how the even technology works, but it could be that while they can engage with you, they could see how susceptible you are, and then who knows?
If you're one of these people, call into the show. Tell us what's going on. Because I get one like every day now. Maybe because I responded to it.
I got a few this week, and I'm like, I knew it was spam because first I got it, and I'm like, "Hi Kevin, how's the project going?" And I'm like, Then I got another one with a different name that wasn't my name. Okay, so there's a pattern here of botnet.
I just respond now. It's on track. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. You wanted to just play along with it.
And then they didn't respond also, so I don't know.
Yeah, one of our followers on Instagram, actually, we now have 80 something. We got to like 85 this week.
Pretty
Buckle
good.
up! Click.
Yeah. What's the I don't like this. I don't like that at all.
One of them, it's like, it's a bunch of friends that we know and people who actually don't know. And then on the bottom it says, "This girl wants to fuck." So we sent her a voice note. We'll see what happens. But it's these spam bots. Like Instagram is known to be full of these bots, these fake accounts. And I shared one as a joke because our first follower was a bot who was like, "Hey, naughty, come take a pic with me." And I shared it as a story, and we got flagged for community guidelines.
Right. So the Instagram account is allowed to remain on Instagram, but we can't talk about that account on Instagram. Does that make sense?
What gives, Zuckerberg?
Also, and on the old on the clip about talking about the vaccine, Dr. D's message about the vaccine. If you go to share it, a flag comes up and says, "Make sure you're not sharing misinformation. Go to this website." I don't have a problem with that. It's just wild that I guess they can like crawl around the audio.
I don't know if they can
clips about the vaccine.
So I'm not sure if it detected what we were saying and then said, "Make sure this is valid."
That's
or anytime you talk COVID and you tag COVID or vaccine in it.
Did you tag COVID?
I did.
Oh, that's probably.
I also tagged COVID misinformation. I thought it was no, but
just so people know.
But if you talk about it, because it said the alert said, "Make sure this information is reliable. Learn more about COVIDness underneath," which seemed a mix of generic and a warning. It didn't say this information may be thing. It just said, if you're going to be sharing something. I think it was. Right. It's when Mark Zuckerberg goes to Congress and says, "We're doing everything we can to put in measures to protect against misinformation." So maybe anytime somebody is talking COVID, they throw that up. Mm-hmm. It's cool to think they listen through and we makes us feel a little badass.
Oh, I don't think a human is listening through. I just thought there's a program that listens through that can pick up on a video that has the word COVID in it.
So I don't know if it's that or if it's just the second you start, they detect a post might be about that. Mm-hmm. Because I noticed every single time at the beginning of the pandemic when you tagged COVID-19, it would just say vaccine info here. Like anytime, it would automatically put under your video, "For more info on the vaccine, click here." So I think that might be what's going on, as opposed to like this nefarious algorithmic bot AI detecting that we're talking about something.
If you work at Instagram, give us a call.
Yeah, here at Buckle Up, we appreciate this comment's going nowhere.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to wrap up what I was about to say, it just dissipated into the air.
We'll edit it out.
Okay. I did a funny face to just pay off. So, you saw Dune this week. I haven't yet.
I saw Dune. We're going to talk about it properly, but it blew my face off.
Oh, man. Is it going to be one of those situations now where if I get to it too late, if it's not the best movie in the world, I'll have to automatically be the one who doesn't think it's the best movie, even if it's good?
Yeah. You should watch it before the hype cycle ends and the backlash starts.
I feel like it's already too late. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Remember Slumdog Millionaire?
Yeah.
When that movie came out, everyone was like, "You have to see this movie," right? Mm-hmm. Hi-ho! Remember? I went to see it like a couple of weeks after the hype, and it was good. But the whole time I'm kind of in my head holding the standard. Okay, is this the best movie in the world? Do I have to see this? Like, you automatically throw this standard on the movie that's impossible. as opposed to if I had discovered it early and been one of those people, it would have had that. So that's always an interesting thing. And we used to argue about movies all the time because I used to always have such a high standard and always point to the flaws in movies and stuff. And you would say, you hate everything. You're never going to like anything. Remember, this was an old debate.
Yeah, we saw Hancock, that Will Smith movie.
It's horrible.
Yeah, I was like, it's fine. It's a fine movie.
Because you had a very unconscious way of watching film. You're like...
I appreciate the escape.
Yeah, and you said, listen, if the movie happened, start to finish, and I didn't lose interest or get upset, fine.
Yeah.
But I always had a much more artistic critique of it. Like, look how bad that writing was, and and this just doesn't make sense, and that would bother me. But you'd be like, it happened. It's over. I feel fine. Hancock.
iRobot also. I remember I went to go see iRobot. I was exhausted. I think we saw it together.
Yeah.
And I didn't fall asleep, and I was like, it must have been a good movie.
But it's so unconscious. You're like, it must have been good. I don't know, because I didn't think about it.
Yeah, well, so fast forward to now. Yeah. My plan was to spend a day. We'll talk about what I was doing during the day, and then watch Dune at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I just remember saying to my friend, I was like, Dune's gonna suck. She's like, why is it gonna suck? I'm like, everything sucks now. It's of course it's gonna suck. They like hype it up and the trailers and this and it's on HBO Max. It's just gonna suck. Whatever. Let's just watch it, get through it, whatever. So that's where I'm at now. And then watching it made me realize how much everything has sucked lately. Because this didn't suck. This was like, maybe it wasn't the perfect movie, but it was like a solid
1999 level.
Like cinema experience. Wow. It was very.
You saw it in the theaters or on?
No, I watched it on HBO Max.
Is it in theaters or people are just watching on HBO Max? People are just watching at home.
People are watching at home. It is in theaters. I know one person who went to go see it in theaters. It's in IMAX. It's supposed to be really cool in IMAX. But it was like we're so used to watching TV series that are just like, okay, this was like a movie.
Wow,
like a proper movie.
Yeah, I remember. I'm trying to remember the last movie. You know when you're like in a movie and you're like, man, I haven't sat this long straight. Like it's way past the point where the episode of an equivalent TV show would have ended.
Yeah. And
you're like, you start to move in your chair, you're like, I haven't done this in a long ass time. But if it's a good enough movie, you still don't get anxious, but you're just like, your body hasn't felt that like, stagnant in the same place for a straight 2 hour period in a long time when you're watching a movie straight. I forget what movie I watched where it was like that. But it was recently we just put on a movie and I was like, it had been ages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like from TikTok to 1 minuters to like your 20 to 30 minute binge stuff. We started Ted Lasso this past week. Watching
I'm in the middle.
Which is real charming.
Yeah. Charming. It is charming.
Very charming and wholesome and nice. Yeah. And you want to kind of not like it. And I still, in some ways, there's parts of it where I'm just like, that could have been better or that felt a little forced. But it has enough charm that it makes up for it. That's my so far with Ted Lasso. Like the way the character Ted has an effect on the characters. You're a character, and you're like, you kind of want to like, is this real? And I haven't finished it, but I'm just like, he's likable. So
that's exactly it. Everything is, it's great. It's fine. Yeah, it's fine. And then I watched this, and I was like, oh, that was good. That was good. It wasn't just fine. It was good.
Right. Interesting. Okay,
that's how I felt about it.
I saw a clip also, like Hans Zimmer did the music, and that's always intriguing as a film composer myself.
And the story itself, I mean, it's wild to think that filmmakers like Spielberg and Lucas, what's his name? George Lucas, not only made the films and like.
I mean, with Star Wars, I just wanted to make movies that I wanted to make movies that I wanted to see.
You have the same hair as him, sort of.
George Lucas?
Yeah, he's kind of got the same hair.
Spielberg has a very particular. I haven't done a Spielberg impression, but
what does he sound like? I don't even know. He doesn't do a ton of interviews, does he?
He does, but I can't do it. But there's definitely something in the mouth.
Probably.
Anyway, what about them?
Well, they not only made these spectacular movies and innovated the industry, they also wrote the scripts. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, not only did they...
he has no chin. Very sad.
No chin.
He was born without a chin. It was like an early birth defect in the early 50s.
And then they put one in.
They put one in. It fell into his neck. Here.
It keeps falling. It gets further and further. Right?
Yeah, that's why Darth Vader also has a very strong masked chin. Not many people know that.
In all of his movies, there's a character with a strong chin.
I've been waiting for you, Obi-Wan.
That's why.
I am your man.
Yeah. Keep going.
Well, anyway, they made these spectacular movies, innovated the industry, and also wrote the stories, like Indiana Jones, Star Wars. Whereas Dune mostly what makes it awesome is the world and the story, and their ability to adapt it is really impressive. But I mean, imagine if the director Denis Villeneuve, I want to say.
Villeneuve, I have no idea.
Imagine if he not only made this but also created Dune. You know, we'd have another icon. It's just wild to think what these people are icons for a reason.
But Spielberg didn't write his movies; he directed them. So there were screenwriters on the Spielberg movies. I know he's the visionary.
Yeah, but they came up. Him and George Lucas came up with Indiana Jones, and then they got, I think, Larry Kasdan to write.
Yeah, so the
script.
nitty gritty screenwriting
They
and dialogue.
They create the story.
But they created these.
Right. If he had created the world of Dune, that wow.
Yeah.
That would be.
Did he though, or did we?
No, he
not know?
didn't. No. It's a book by Frank Herbert, and it's been adapted before.
I think the last decade and more, everyone sort of, in general, is nostalgic of the era where the movies had the most impact on them. So some people love the 70s, some people love the 80s, whatever, like the formative years that you discovered movies. I'm a 90s kid. But I do find if you critically compare action movies in particular from now, from the ones out now to the ones in the 90s, they're missing story. They're missing characters. Yeah. They have glitz and glam, and they have so much effects and VFX that's crazy impressive. But even things like with the Avengers, they're great movies, and they have some humor in them, but like the first Iron Man, for example, that rivals any 90s movie because it has real story and you're invested in Iron Man as a character and Robert Downey Jr. and the whole, like it has real dialogue. Yeah. That's what makes an action movie. Even stuff on top of that, like if you look at movies like The Rock or Speed or like the classic action movies of the 90s, they had great characters.
Yeah.
And even if some of it's cheesy and stuff like,
it's that one with Bruce Willis and
Die Hard?
Die Hard, yeah.
You blanked
I never watched those.
You blanked on Die Hard. But
I've never seen Die Hard.
But all of them have, even if they don't have the greatest stories, they have characters you're really invested in. Who are
relationships.
Who are deeper than just a Vin Diesel, I'm strong.
It's about family.
It's about family. But they have like intriguing characters that you want to go there with so that the action just enhances that character and that story, not just like this shallow surface level thing where it's meaningless.
Yeah.
But I would say, what was the other one I was thinking of? Bruce Willis. I'm trying to think of other sort of classic 90s action movies that had also great story to them.
Face Off?
So you saw the thing with Patrice O'Neal and
no.
There's an amazing clip. Patrice O'Neal, rest his soul. It's an Opie and Anthony where it's Patrice O'Neal and Jim Norton.
Yeah.
Who you said looks like
an aborted fetus.
Yes, looks like an aborted fetus. And he's like, and Patrice O'Neal, I think, was the one. He goes off at first and says, "Yeah, man, like Face Off, that was a kick-ass movie." And Norton goes, "That was the shittiest fucking movie I've ever seen." and he goes off on why Face Off is ridiculously dumb.
Jim Norton or Patrice?
Jim Norton goes, he's like, "What is this?" All of a sudden he becomes the fucking villain. The wife has no idea. Whatever, wipes the kid's face. So fucking creepy. And Patrice, by the end of it, goes, "You're right. It's the worst." He just is so convinced. You're right. I can't believe I thought it was good. Like he says it as like a second nature thing, but then by the end, Jim Norton completely convinces him that it's the worst movie ever. We should link that clip because it's so freaking.
So I'm Patrice. I just sit at every movie and I'm like, oh my god, this is incredible.
It's funny. You would think Patrice would be hypercritical.
Yeah, you'd think so.
But he thought it was great. Yeah, that was a great movie. And Norton goes, "No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't."
Castor Troy.
Yeah, just all of it. Anyway.
But it wasn't a great. I mean, it was great because I love it. It came out. I think I was in 5th grade. It was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen. But it's not. Is it a great movie?
It has its stupidities, but at least the acting and the characters themselves, like.
Is that true?
It's more that movie. Face Off is more premise than anything else. Someone came up with a great, really
I wouldn't say
premise.
That's about the characters. Face Off. You don't even remember his name, do you?
Castor Troy.
I mean, because I just said it.
Yes, that I remember, and John Travolta's character.
And John Travolta, yeah, exactly. I don't remember their name.
But John Travolta was killing. Broken Arrow, all those great movies.
That's my standard for if a movie has a good character and an actor did a good job, you don't say Brad Pitt's character, Leo's character. You remember the character's name itself.
That's a good point.
It's rare I remember a character's name.
I'm just sitting here trying to think of John to prove my point.
Yeah.
John Travolta's name in Face Off. You don't remember, huh?
No.
Pollux is the brother. Pollux Troy, castrated. See, I didn't just
That's
say it because
pretty- that's actually
his name is
pretty good.
Pollux.
Yeah.
He ties his shoelace every time he falls through. I think that was like a thing that they had as
Right,
kids.
right.
Even though it's kind of stupid. So like, let's throw a little thing in there
that
to show
prison
that they're
where
brothers.
where their shoes go
Buckle.
on the floor. Yeah.
I'm Castor Troy. I'm. Remember, he goes to the thing. I'm getting the name. He goes, I'm something something. There is a bomb at the LA Convention Center.
That's pretty good.
Face shot. What? My Nicolas Cage? Yeah. I'm what's his name? Somebody in the comment section, please tell me what John Travolta's name is in Face Off. I've spent too much time on it, but I guess you're right. It was a shitty movie.
I have a friend who like to say parties like the night Castor Troy got out of jail, where he opens that briefcase.
Is it
and the
cocaine?
gold guns, and he just goes nuts. Just parties every night like that, like he just got out of jail. Yeah.
Woo! Archer, Sean Archer.
Yay!
We should stop it now. I'm Sean Archer. I'm Sean Archer. Sean
All right,
Archer.
it was a good movie. Face Off was a good movie.
He founds a journal of Sean Archer, and writing about his wife. He's like, missed again. We haven't made love in 2 months. What a loser. I hate to see you go. I love to watch you leave. Sean. I just proved Face Off was great.
Yeah,
Remembered
all
every
right.
fucking line and the brother's name, Pollux. What was someone have to do to get a tongue sandwich? And it's for the big ride, baby. And he tries to cut his face off at the end. Creepy stuff.
I think we've gone deeper than I remember it now.
Woo! I'm Sean Archer. I can't believe it. Okay. I'm proud of myself. We could cut it there, but we're not going to because there's
Good
one.
for you. I'm impressed.
Okay. I had to dig deep into my 90s vault.
Yeah.
Like, remember they had a speedboat chase scene?
No, I don't remember.
Like, well, there was. I think the director's an Asian guy who did all those action movies. What's his name? Chinese director who did all
Fang?
something.
Did he make the Hulk also?
No, but he made all those action movies that are like the classic '90s action movies. I think he also did The Rock and all those things.
Yeah.
The
if
Rock
I
is
heard
great
it,
too.
I would-
The Rock, Ed Harris's character in The Rock's great character, complicated bad guy. Remember Ed Harris in The Rock?
Yeah.
And he was conflicted,
Right.
and he was
I think
good
I
and bad,
agree-
and good and
At
bad.
this point in my life, I think I agree with him. What was he doing? He was protesting. It was a protest of some kind.
In The Rock,
Oh, like
this
against the
podcast has
army or
this
the military
podcast has
or
become
something.
a Nerdzilla film podcast. One of those. Anyway, so did you get
No, it's not because
Did you get any ass this weekend? We don't know any of the answers.
any of the answers of what we're talking about. So
Ed Harris's
Yeah.
character, he's a general in the army,
Yeah.
honorable man. His soldiers had been repeatedly left behind to die on his missions, and he was very, very jaded and pissed at the American government.
and I think a proper response is taking over an unused prison and making a threat. I think he had a point. Is all I'm saying.
He certainly had a point, which is why it made the movie compelling.
Right, but then I think he wanted to kill everyone in San Francisco.
He didn't, though, in the end. Remember? He bluffed.
I don't remember now. Is that what happens?
The whole thing is he takes hostages,
Yeah.
right?
Someone should.
Okay,
make-
Sean Connery looks at Ed Harris, and he comes back to Nicolas Cage. He said, he's a soldier, not a... Holy shit.
Oh God, that was scary.
Someone's putting up a mezuzah.
Oh God.
I thought the world was ending. But the point is that Ed Harris, Sean Connery's character, what's his name in the movie? Mason. Mason.
Not even close.
He comes back to Nicolas Cage and he says, and he's like, he's gonna fire the rocket. We need to stop these fucking rockets. Remember? And Sean Connery goes, he's a soldier, not a monster. I read it in his eyes. He's a soldier, not a monster. There's a scene where they have a stare off, and he goes, you know, patriotism is the virtue of the vicious, according to Oscar Wilde. And he bashes him on the head. He goes, thank you for proving my point. Sean Connery says that to Ed
I
Harris.
don't remember any of this.
I probably watched these movies 1,000 times as a kid.
Sir
That's
Sean Connery. by the way.
Sir Sean Connery, rest his soul. Remember
Is
he
he?
died? He died. He was in his 90s.
you don't
We didn't
say.
know that. There's a famous video of him on YouTube where this woman's like, you really think it's appropriate to hit a woman? And he goes, I think if she's been out of line and has said something that has bothered you, a little smack is certainly appropriate.
He said not in the movie, in real life.
In real life.
Oh wow.
It's one of these epic, you know, like the misogynists of YouTube love this clip, but it's
Yeah.
like, I think it's appropriate to lightly hit a woman if she's gotten out of line, sure. He says she's a soldier, not a monster. Anyway, Ed Harris is a great character of the 90s action
They
movies.
should
That's memorable.
remake The Rock from Ed Harris's point of view.
Well, in the end,
I'd watch that.
yeah, but in the end, he doesn't kill everybody. So you don't remember what happens. They fire that rocket,
Yeah, it goes in the water.
and he presses the button at the end that misdirects it from the game.
Yeah,
He's like,
sounds
not about to kill 700,000 people,
He's a
70
good
million
guy.
people. Are you out of your mind?
Oh, and his
And
soldiers wanted him to do it.
His
Right,
mercenaries
right,
are
right.
evil. They're out for money. They're like, mercenaries get paid. The second we took hostages, we became mercenaries, sir. Now you're remembering?
I don't, but I would like to see that movie.
We've gotten
remade.
so down these 90s rabbit holes.
more with that.
Tell me, are you a fan of Elton John? Rocket Man. And he goes, I don't listen. You're going to like this part. One more quote from The Rock, and then we'll move on. Because I think I've said this to you before.
The listeners.
He's
are
like,
dropping
tell me,
off.
are you a fan? There's a scene where Nicolas Cage is like plotting how to kill this guy. He lines him up in front of the rocket, and you can tell his nerdness is getting excited. I'm double checking the audio here. Good. His nerdness is getting super excited at one of the bad guys. He goes, tell me, are you a fan of Elton John's Rocket Man? I don't like soft ass shit. The guy just looks, I don't like soft
That
ass
was
shit.
Ving Rhames, right?
It's not Ving Rhames.
It's not.
It's
Ving
not. It's the other black guy in the movie.
Rhames.
But it's. I knew you would say that. It's like in that time, Con Air is Ving Rhames, Bulldog, Mad Dog. He might have been in The Rock
that's
too.
not Ving Rhames. It is.
Yeah,
He doesn't speak, does he?
yeah, he does.
In the Con Air? Con Air
Mad
was
Dog,
good.
Mad Dog. But Con Air's also one of the dumbest movies ever. If you
Oh,
watch it
yeah,
again
yeah.
now, it's so stupid.
I remember seeing it with my dad, and my dad was laughing the whole time, and I was so mad at him because I was like, "This is the best movie ever. Why are you laughing?"
He walks, gets shot in the arm, and doesn't move.
Yeah,
Some of it's really weird. And then there's like the John Belushi scenes. It's a very strange movie.
John Belushi.
Jim Belushi?
Oh no,
No, Steve Buscemi.
Steve Buscemi.
John Belushi.
Oh yeah, and he was sitting in the empty pool,
And then at
in
the
in
end, he's
little-
like just having fun, and he's eating people, but
yeah.
you don't know how you're supposed to feel. But it had
It was
great
supposed to
character.
be funny. I think it was supposed
It was
to be funny.
it was a little
Yeah.
tongue in cheek, the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Sai
yeah.
Anara, best scene in the movie when he lights the guy on fire with a cigarette.
I don't remember that.
He goes, Sai, he stole the plane. Where's my fucking plane? Sai Anara. And he throws the cigarette
I don't remember
and
that.
lights the guy up. How do you best movie ever? You don't remember these things.
No.
But what were we just talking about? Which movie? Oh no! So he says the Rocket Man. I don't like
Yeah.
soft ass shit. I thought that was funny. He fires the rocket. In the end, Ed Harris doesn't fire the rocket because he actually knows he's a good man. He doesn't want to kill innocent people,
Right.
and that's why he has to die at the end because he's made that mistake. But it was complicated, and that's what made '90s movies good.
Oh.
Characters from the '90s, which were good. Even his general assistant commander joins him and fires on the other guys. But like you said, General, it's over, and then they have a massive shootout. If I could turn back time. Anyway, movies today should take a lesson. You should watch Dune. By next week, I'll have watched it, and we can dig even deeper into Nerdzilla Fest.
Yeah. Well, not next. We're 2 weeks, right?
Well, we'll do another one then. When next time I watch, then the next one, because we're going to divide this podcast up into two parts. We'll release it
taking a
this
break
week and
for a
next
week.
week. I'm going to be traveling in LA, so we'll release it in two parts.
Yeah.
But we promised last week we would discuss something very important, and that was why people from our community, the modern Orthodox Jewish community,
Right.
do not go into creative endeavors.
For the most part, right?
For the most part.
We were on our way to. You got your first sort of like gig, like scheduled gig, and before Tyler Fisher's show in Brooklyn, and we were in the car on the way there. And you laid out this theory that I thought was really interesting.
Oh, it was a comedy
Or-
gig you're talking about.
It was a comedy.
Yeah,
gig.
I was
yeah,
doing
yeah,
a set.
Yeah, you're doing like a 7-minute set about why, people from our community usually go into one of several very lucrative careers instead of something in the creative field.
Those careers
do you
being,
remember what
let's
you
say,
said?
finance, law, medicine, real estate, family business. That's it. Kind of, right? There's like that. That's the range.
Yeah, I would maybe even put marketing more in the creative field.
Yeah.
It's not because it's not super lucrative.
Right,
Really,
exactly.
unless you're very good
If you're
at
going
it
to do
and
marketing
stick
and
with
hate
for
it,
a
you might
long
as well do
time.
finance and hate it.
You know what?
But I don't know enough about what marketing means. You
no,
could
yeah,
speak to that.
the truth is, I agree with that. I agree with that because at the end of the day, marketing, you don't really get to be too creative. You're working for somebody else's voice, and it is a little bit crushing if you're a creative person. And there's a lot of creative people who do it, and they think, well, I'll be able to do that and then do my creative thing on the side. That never happens.
You're saying it never satisfies the creative thirst of a creative person. It's sort of a safe way to do something that's not businessy, full on.
Yeah, it'll not even satisfy. It crushes that part of you a little bit because you need to be creative. So by the end of the day, you're drained. You don't have any time for your own creative endeavors, but you're not being creative in the way that fulfills you. So I mean, for it could be really tough, and you're not making that much money. So I mean, for me, I rather just like stuff envelopes and fill out spreadsheets if I'm gonna do
that makes a lot of
job, and then really have a little bit of energy at the end of the day to like write a fun story or whatever.
Right, for balance. So all
Personally,
your
that's-
creative energy is spent on your passion and what you really want out there. In
Exactly, and your job is your job. You don't love it, but it serves a role, and
You save that gas in the tank for your own creative pursuits as opposed to trying to like spread it thin.
Exactly. I remember. Yeah. I remember when I was interning at a direct marketing firm. I sat down with this guy or one of the guys who works there who's like in his 40s, and he just kind of looked at me and he was like, "Don't do it. Don't do it." He's like, "I wish I would have never started."
Ay.
Like, oh, good.
Oh, okay.
But I took it to heart. Well, anyway, so right, so it's one of those like finance, law, medicine, real estate, or family business. And do you remember how you explained it?
Yes, I've thought about it even more since then, and have other thoughts on it as well, because I'm very sympathetic to the idea that those careers, like, I don't knock them in the sense that it makes a lot of sense given the cost of living the modern Orthodox Jewish lifestyle.
Which is what maybe for people who
I'm about to say. Given the costs involved in that lifestyle, private schools, being part of a community that's near a synagogue and that raises the cost of where you're living, tri-state area or big cities where there tends to be a high concentration, because being modern Orthodox requires being part of a community. Otherwise, it can be very challenging. It's also very enriching to be part of a community. So you're in more expensive areas to live in. You're sending to private schools, as I said, and you're having kids very younger than average.
Right.
So that lends itself to careers where they start to pay pretty well pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So those careers, put in a few years and you could be making stable, reliable income. At least I think. I mean, this is from my observation. Very quickly. And I remember, not very quickly, not that anything comes easy, but at least it's like you can sort of project that, as opposed to creative endeavors.
By the time you're 26, you could be making you could be making $300,000 by the time you're 26.
My point is, before I even crunch the numbers, it's that in general, in the macro, the creative pursuits, sort of as a rule in general, are much more of a long game. And it's not like you can't be very successful in either endeavor, in the business world or in the creative world. But in the creative world, it is just true for the most part. It's not a lottery. You don't just like win overnight. You have to really put in the years and years of building up, of working on your craft, building an audience, or building up your connections and your, human capital as a creative person, depending on what you're doing in whatever area of business you are in, music or art or whatever it is. It's a long game, and it's unstable all the time. You have years where you do really well. You have years where you don't do as well, but you're putting in time development wise. So it's fundamentally a little bit less stable, which doesn't always suit a modern Orthodox lifestyle early on. So I can see why you'd be steered away from it. It's true, like on the numbers themselves. Like my father used to tell me when I was in high school, when I was thinking about going into music and taking it seriously, he would just say, Ami, keep your eye on the ball. Whatever you do, because he did give me a lot of encouragement. But he said, but just make sure you keep your eye on the ball. And that ball was a big ball of cash. Like, that's what he meant, the ball, a huge ball of cash. And one day he just broke the numbers down for me and was like, if you're not making, he say, at $250K a year, Ami, at $250K a year, you're spending every penny you have. You're spending it. Now, I feel like to the average American, to that salary, $250,000 sounds like, a certain percentage of upper income earners. But with the costs of all the stuff I talked about, with private schooling and wherever you're going to live and all of those things in a big family, he's like, at $250, you're spending everything. You'll get by, but you're spending every dollar. $500K. I think he said something for like $100K, not going to work. $250K, you're spending everything. By $500,000, it's okay. And I was like,
yeah.
And I was 16 or something. He was just trying to level with me as he saw that I was really getting passionate about music and entertainment and wanting to be in that world. He was just, he used to say all the time, I could have been a comedy writer. I had some good ideas. But I always kept my eye on the ball. He's got parents who were immigrants, working class, and hyper-focused, hyper-ambitious. And speaking to my dad's point and just the overall culture that we grew up around all these boomers who came from nothing for the most part and were hyper-successful financially.
Yeah, the most successful generation ever.
And part of the boomer generation, and then just around your culture and around these people, you're just like in awe a little bit of like, that's insane. Like the booming 80s, all that stuff. And I think what's interesting is that we're making this point about why not enough people go into creative fields. But I would also argue that more people do than previous generations because, to be honest, you're afforded these opportunities when you come from backgrounds that can help support that, at least for in the short term, in the beginning, when you're just getting started, you have that flexibility in ways that my parents' generation certainly didn't. And so like there's that element of it too. Coming from middle class to upper middle class backgrounds, that affords you these opportunities. Having said that, still a lot of people don't do it.
Yeah. Right. Well, you were
who
saying
regret it. I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't.
Well, we agreed the only way to do it is with a lot of help. If you want to have kids and you want to live in the tri-state area, you need a cushion. You need help.
Right.
Otherwise, it's pretty impossible.
Well, there's
to wrap your head around it.
There's making a living and making a living as a modern Orthodox Jew are two kind of different things with different requirements, right?
Right. So there's modern Orthodox Jews, but I think anyone
this whole conversation is at the risk of sounding super detached, which I get a little self-conscious about, but we're trying to be honest. It's just like the risk of sounding like I'm not saying. Yeah, it's just like I have to be honest about that. That's a weird feeling, and I'm very grateful for the opportunities I've had and for my parents, being supportive when I was younger in pursuing the arts and all that stuff. So I'm very grateful for that and supporting me going to college and studying music and all those things. But at the same time, I have met people in the course of whatever who also started in the same position that say my parents did when they started, where they didn't have anything, but you find a way. So at the end of the day, I still think if you're determined enough and can figure it out, you can figure it out. But
sure. Well, you've said also in the past, you can totally start without a cushion and without help, but things get delayed where you may not be having kids until your 40s, or you may not be able to live where you want to live until your 40s.
I wasn't preaching that. I was just saying that.
You're saying that's the reality of.
I can't say because I can't say with full authority how things are supposed to go. But I was saying that I was trying to, and getting into this game early on when I was like an intern and I was making no money, literally working for free for like the first few months out of college. And I would look around and I'd see the success stories of people who were doing stuff I wanted to be doing. And you ask them their trajectory and like, how did this happen? And, you were getting things like, well, I lived in an apartment in Burbank till I was 40. Then I got married and had one kid. And, so they played the long game, but they didn't have, and I knew that wasn't going to be for me because of just my cultural and religious background. So I was like, okay, so there's not that many equivalents that you're trying to reference, and there's a good reason for that. It takes a lot of that grit and grind. So having when you're starting out and have nothing going on, having that support can be very beneficial, and I can see why it would steer a lot of people away from it. But I still think, I don't know. I think that there, I've met tons of people. I've met more people in the course of my experience who do also have families and are doing it, and they figure out all sorts of other ways too. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's a very privileged conversation.
Exactly.
But I think it's important to have. I mean, because it doesn't only apply to modern Orthodox people. I mean, I think anyone who comes from a certain community or certain lifestyle, there's that unspoken pressure to match that with your own career and your own life, and it could be very crushing, And if
and crushing because you're trapped. You can't complain about it, right? Because you're privileged and you have you come from we went to camp, we went to private schools, we did those things,
right?
And even saying it out loud, it's like you get this hyper self-consciousness about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing on some level that
why
that's your. I mean, just 'cause,
I'm asking out loud. I agree.
Yeah.
But like, is that healthy? Gary Vee talks about all the time, like. You know what's worse than being born into something? You know what's better than being born into something? Being born into nothing.
Yeah.
Because you crawl on your fucking Ferrari, right? Like, you know what people I see? People are like, yeah, you started on this, but
well, I'm saying that's not us. We don't have Ferraris.
Yes.
But we come from like nice houses from well-to-do families where like. Thank God if someone needs a surgery, it doesn't like it's fine. Like it doesn't crush you.
And if you wanted to go to summer camp, you went
that comes along with that, right?
Another thing my dad used to say.
I thought the mic was full. See, I'm just filled with this anxiety.
Another thing my dad used to say was whenever like camp was coming up and I was going to just have fun with friends in camp, you know, and they were sending me off to camp, he'd be like, you know, I worked in the summers. Have fun.
Right.
They took a pride in the fact that we didn't have to do what they didn't have to do,
Yeah.
but they also kind of, they semi wanted to drop the fact that, but it was more of a source of pride for them as opposed to a lesson for us.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he would have said, work, don't go to camp. And maybe that would have been better for that. But I went to camp. It's true. It's like a grass is always greener thing. I kind of love going to camp, but would I have been better suited for the world that I had done? Like, you know, I went to a factory and worked when I was your age. Have fun here. Take a little. Take a little.
You need anything? You need anything?
Do you need a little extra? And like that can be a trap too. And it's not something to be ungrateful for. But like you said, it's weird because I'm sure a lot of people are in this position of you can't complain about it because it's like it reeks of this privilegey like position. But at the same time, then how are you supposed to square these things in your mind?
So I mean, that's the question. If you're privileged enough to not have to pay for your own college, to be able to move in with your parents after college, to save and to choose a little bit the direction you want to go. And if you're that fortunate and that blessed, why do so few people choose to do something that speaks to them? And maybe one theory is that because of this, maybe there's nothing that speaks to them, or maybe there's this sort of untold pressure of you have to pick a lucrative career early on so you can match where you came from.
Yeah, you would think it would cause it to go one way or the other, where you would get more people, but
Right,
you know,
more people taking risks and
you
doing
get this.
interesting
What I
things.
do see is you do get this phenomenon of folks coming out of college who take a while to figure things out. I'm not saying they dive into creative endeavors, but they sort of think for a long, long time.
Right, they
My
try.
grandfather, if you asked him what he did when he got here, he would never have said, "Oh, you know, I'm kind of just figuring things out. You know, I got this startup idea,
Maybe a supermarket.
and maybe you know, my own business. I'm thinking of some shoes I want to sell." They got to work. There was no choice.
Well, they do whatever.
Conceptually, it wasn't even there.
Yeah.
So the fact that now you're given this option can kind of also be this paralyzing limbo stage. I see that a lot from people where they're just like floating and vacillating between choices, not making a choice, not applying like real grit and grind to something. Just sort of like, I don't know. Maybe did you go through that at all a little bit too?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not directly talking about you, maybe indirectly,
Yeah, no,
but like
I
that
mean-
phenomenon of being afforded a place where you can kind of ponder and think is maybe a new phenomenon that I saw, where it's like, for me, I was lucky to know that I was fortunate to know that like I had a direction and that I was going to music school. I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston and studied film scoring and music. So there was a trajectory set out where I didn't have to like have the anxiety of indecision and not knowing what it's going to be, but it's going to be creative. It was sort of like, I knew it's going to be music. Okay. But the Jew in me was saying, I can't just go out and play bass. I'm going to do music for TV because that lends music career credibility. Those choices were all influenced, full disclosure, by that. You know, it wasn't just like, I
totally.
can just go out there with a bass and do it. And the truth is also, I probably practically couldn't for religious reasons and all sorts of things. But still, the thought of just being a musician and not, oh, I do music for film. It had this illustrious like appeal to it that maybe could give me some, like, you know, could feel like it could warrant a career.
Well, would you say most people who take that time to figure it out end up not going into those
Yes.
careers? Because I would say if you're doing banking or law or medicine, you either do it immediately upon college or right after, or you don't do it at all. You don't see a lot of people taking some time to figure things out and then going into banking or
I don't
going
know.
back to med school. Some people do.
I don't know if it's banking, but
Or even law. I mean, a few people go to law school later, but not very many.
you know, so
I can think of one.
yeah,
off the
law
top of my
school
head.
happens at random times, and we're thinking
Here
of
and
one
there,
person maybe.
yeah.
It's hard to say. What I tend to think after all of this, like discussion about where people end up and head up based on their influences is, I still think like the same type of person, no matter what opportunities they're afforded before they start going into the workforce, if you're ready to like be to grind and hustle in the finance world, that's what you're going to do. If you're ready to do that in the creative world, that's what you're going to do.
You're gonna hustle.
Yeah, and you're going to hit it. You're going to go for it right away because there's sort of like I have to do this. Like I sort of felt like for me, I had to make me. That's what like I couldn't imagine doing anything else even well because
Right.
I couldn't even understand a finance conversation. I was like, what's a mergers and acquisition even mean? It was all just it was so not for me, and I knew that. So having that clarity was good.
Yeah.
And I kind of just started grinding in right away, working in that circuit of like working with music production company and like applying that grind and to getting in there and grinding as opposed to the indecision part. There's people who can snap out of that, but that's also a type of person that kind of can sit with indecision for a long time.
Yeah.
And it could be somebody who'll never get into the business world or the finance world and will never get into the creative world either. He'll
They'll just sort of be in the middle.
and maybe they'll do something just like, but nothing that they're really passionate about or interested in. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have come across people who just work as a means to an end for them. And they're just doing it purely for practical things. But I've also met a lot of people who are very passionate about doing finance stuff and enjoy talking about it and enjoy that world.
I mean, I like it. It's
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. So it's hard to say which direction a person like that, if they find themselves in that position, goes into.
Yeah.
I don't know because I just find that I don't know. I haven't been around long enough to see where things happen, where things end up. But also different people find their groove later on at different times.
Right.
So people put this pressure on themselves that by 26 they have to be making a certain amount in a certain level at their career. So I don't want to sound too judgmental to say.
I think if you have a burning desire, a real burning desire to do one thing or another, you're either going to eventually submit to it and do it, or it dies inside of you and you become this really toxic, awful person. Brian Koppelman talks a lot on his podcast, The Moment, about that, where he was overweight, he was smoking cigarettes, he was mean, he was nasty, he didn't enjoy anything because he was a music manager. I mean, he was like an agent, real sort of, and what he wanted to do was be doing the writing. He wanted to be doing the filmmaking, and so eventually he submitted to it because he became aware of it. But if it's not this burning thing, it's easier to just sort of not do it.
Yeah, because it's not for the faint of heart. You're gonna have to deal with a ton of rejection, a ton of long game playing and patience and persistence. And if you don't love it and absolutely undeniably love it, you're not gonna withstand that.
And it's a lack for a long time. I mean, I'm certainly not out of this phase, but you deal with a lack of sort of status and sort of accomplishment, where like your other friends are getting promoted, they're starting their own companies, they're buying houses, whatever it is. You're still trying to figure it out. Or trying to get started, and it's tough. It's tough to do that if you come from a certain sort of community.
It feels tough to feel 10 years behind.
Yeah,
and that's what it feels like. It's almost like whatever, like the money, what you're making, what one makes. It's like in the creative worlds I would say in those pursuits, eventually it'll all kind of even out if you're putting in the time and the work and you're doing it sort of right. But you're like 10 years behind your contemporaries. So that at 25, at 30, they're making a certain amount and you're making a certain amount. And what they made at 20, you're making at 30. And what they're making at 40, you're making at 30 or something like that. Like you're catching up, but you're always a little bit behind.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. If I was making this type of money I make now, when I first got started, I'd be like, I'm fucking rolling in it. So it stinks to always feel like a little bit like just getting by.
Yeah,
which is rough. Yeah. And when I say them, I just mean it feels like when they got started, those first initial salaries when I was working for free as an intern, that's the scale and degree you're working with. I'm just doing literally, just carrying around water for people and getting coffee, and I'm not getting paid anything.
Right.
And they're starting out, and it's like, well, so it starts out at this, whatever it is, 70K, and you're like
70. Yeah,
that's
like I could,
nuts.
yeah.
So
totally.
like, but then you get to 70K in your career or something like that, and you're like, I need to be making double this, triple this.
Well, you do if you're living that life and you have kids and and you need that money. A friend I was talking to, sort of a mentor of mine, and things were moving quickly with like a project I was working on, and I was getting really impatient about it, and I was like, I don't want to wait till December. I want to like go pitch it to studios and production companies now. And he just sort of leaned back and he was like, listen, if you're not process oriented, you're not going to survive in this career. He's like, a good day is when you break a story, you come up with a good idea, you crack a character. That's a good day. A good day has nothing to do with like the results. It doesn't have to do with getting a yes or a no or a paycheck. He's
This
like,
was a mentor of yours.
yeah.
It's a good advice.
It's good advice. And like you said, it takes 10, 15, 20 years to get really good at something. And that's the way to get through. That's the way to get through it. To be just, I'm focused on getting better today. And like, there are definitely like, things that need to get done, basics that I need to earn. But just be process oriented through it. And it's something I'm still working on.
He's totally right.
Yeah, I thought it was great advice.
Very good advice. When Distant Cousins wrote a theme song, we're working on this show for Netflix. Yeah. It was cool. We were doing a theme song for the show. We went to the premiere parties in LA when these shows get launched. And one of the show creators said to us, he's like, this is actually my first show that has gotten, final all the way. For him, it was a big deal.
He was 75.
He's like, I'm so relieved. No, but he said to us, it's funny, when I first got to LA, somebody said to me, it takes about 9 years from when you start writing and working here till you'll get something. And he was in year 9 when this show got green lit. And it just gives you a sense, it's very humbling. You're like, wow. But then there's another debate that comes in, which can shift, and maybe we can wrap up on this point and leave a little cliffhanger for the part 2. Because this is fascinating to me, and I always wonder how somebody assesses if they're just being process-oriented or not aware that they're in the wrong area and doing it wrong.
Great question.
Dun, dun, dun. We can sit on it for a second, because I'm always like, I have come across people who've, either asked advice about getting music on film and TV or these kinds of things, and you listen to like the work where it's currently at. And to be honest, you're just like, this needs a lot of work. Like, this needs a lot more, or this is not it, the it factor, whatever it is. And there's reasons for that, where you're just like, either the writing isn't strong enough, the songwriting isn't strong enough, the production, whatever it may be. And I'm coming at it from a musical perspective because that's the experience I have. But that advice that he said, being process oriented, that your mentor said, is very good and very sound advice. It's also very dangerous, because if taken the wrong way, you could be spending 10 years doing the wrong thing, or doing it's like doing an exercise incorrectly. You'll end up massively injured and not with any more muscle on you, because like, hey, I did push-ups every single day. Yeah, but you did them like this, and nobody came and corrected you to this, so you're going like this for 10 years, and now you can't walk and you failed, even though you put in the time.
Like, what are those goalposts that you should be crossing on your way towards getting
now
better?
Is that results, or is it what do you, or how do you do you assess it?
How do you assess your progress?
Now, essentially, you do have to have some results eventually. You just do, right? Otherwise, but I think it's maybe the answer is, how do you process or qualify a result? Is a result a show becoming massive and a huge hit, or is it a director going, I really like that idea?
Right, and then how long can you live with people just going, you're great, you're great,
and it's not family saying it. It's sort of also, I think you have to approach process while also being very conscious of how things are resonating and connecting with people. Like, if you're doing comedy, you got to get some people to laugh. Like, if nobody laughs at your jokes, not one person, maybe it's the jokes.
Right. So
if half the room, if a third of the people laugh at the jokes, maybe you have a niche style that not for everybody, but some people. And if half the room laughs, a lot of comics will say that's perfect. If everybody laughs, you have this commercial appeal. Who knows? But the point is, you have to get some laughs. You have to get some reaction or something. And judging each one as a result in and of itself, like this mentor saying, this is really good, you cracked the character today. That's a result. Not, we got the show on NBC.
Right. The people I've met who do it professionally are usually seem very self-aware and emotionally intelligent. Like they're like, meaning they could fit in well in any corporate environment. Like, they understand.
You're talking about people who do what?
People who write professionally. Like, they're not deluded. They're very pragmatic, and they're very they're not these like artists in their own mind. They're very grounded in terms of the business end of it, which maybe that's a muscle you need to be successful and track your own progress to make sure you're not going down this sort of self-deluded hole.
Right. It can be very easily taken the wrong way or misunderstood advice to say failing is a part of it. You have to fail. Because what if somebody is just continually failing because the work is...
I would love to hear what Gary Vee has to say about that.
Right. I think he would say quantity leads to quality, and I think if you dig beneath the hood, under the hood, you'll find that people who are not where they want to be aren't working hard enough. Not that they're not good enough. They're not putting in the time necessary to get good. They're holding on precious to some piece of work, and they're not working every single day to make it better or improving or writing new things or coming up with new ideas. They're just like, this is my hit. And they're getting precious about their baby. Is this hitting close to home a little bit? I'm looking forward to. But you find that leads to... But you're right.
That's something I'm dealing with. Absolutely.
And I think for me, I've proven to myself that, I've been rejected from many more commercials than I've had music in, and I've had many more songs that don't go final and get considered but fail. But actually, on the whole, you only need those few little things to at least signal to you that you're doing the right thing. It's just circumstantial. And as opposed to the other where I was like, I have this hit song, and nobody's like, but I'm committed and I'm convinced this is the one, and I'm never giving up on it. Maybe that's a sort of failure mindset where it's not the right kind of failing. It's using the failures or the things that don't reach where you wanted them to reach as fuel to keep things building.
Well, that brings up another discussion about sort of the difference between being art-oriented and career-oriented. You can have a baby that you want to see through, regardless of what anyone else thinks about it, but that makes you an artist, not a career person. I have this script that I believe in fully, that it's my dream to see it made and see it made into a series, etc. And that can be sort of my artistic muse, but there comes a certain point where focusing on it doesn't make any sort of business sense.
Right.
It doesn't mean I can't do it. I just have to be clear about what am I trying to do here. Am I trying to birth something and bring it to the world? And that's fine. It doesn't necessarily make you a professional writer. Right. Or you can try to be a professional writer and move on to something else.
It's funny you say that, because to springboard, the word came out
It's a
weird.
good name for a
springboard,
for a podcast. Springboard.
Yeah. To springboard off of that and going in we keep having this conversation, and now I'm going to circle it back again to contradict it. I have found that there's this emancipation moment that happens after you've put in the work and time from the business perspective. Like you were saying there's the art and then there's the business. So you have to let go of that. But then you hear people say, once I started not giving a shit and just making what I wanted to make, I had the most success. So then you have to square that idea, because I actually am starting to lean into that.
I know, and I love watching it.
But I actually think it's like a sequential thing. Like one thing has to come before the other for it to really, I think, work. In other words, the person who then comes, it's not like a replacement theology.
Right.
Where now I can make what I want. I should have been doing this all along. Maybe not. You probably had to go through the, business mindset oriented thing to learn the rules and then break them. You know?
Yeah.
You can't break rules until you know where they are and then go past them. Otherwise, you're just kind of lost. So if you go into saying, I'm just going to make what I want to make, forget everybody else, forget input, and forget consideration. Yeah. That could turn out great. And you have purists and people who've done it that way. Radiohead has always been a little bit strange, but it works for them in a sense. But at the same time, you're not building up a lot of the chops and resilience and fitness, creative fitness, to withstand sort of the industry that's you're about to dive into and the jungle that you're diving into. So in doing that, when you get to the place where you're freed up and want to explore, you're well equipped to develop something that you feel it represents you fully. Totally. And you have the confidence to navigate the terrain.
And I think that also goes back to how good of an artist are you. If you're working on what truly speaks to you and it doesn't speak to anybody else, you might just not be a very good artist. If you're working on something that really speaks to you and it speaks to millions and millions of people, those are our great artists. Everyone likes to shit on Lena Dunham. she made a show like, you know, the first show she ever worked on spoke to millions and millions of people of her generation. Like she is an artist that what speaks to her speaks to other people, and that's why she's a huge deal.
But we also don't know the backstory. How Lena Dunham got that show made.
Well, whatever it is.
How many failed pursuits. For the sake of argument, I understand.
Well, I mean, she was pretty fresh. Like I think she went to film school. She made a film. Maybe it wasn't her first. I think it was her first
But to my
feature
point,
length film, and then she made this series. But there are certain artists who are sort of fully formed where they don't need to go through that process for as long, and those are our great artists.
where's Lena Dunham now?
She just got married, I think.
To Jack Antonoff?
No, not to Jack Antonoff. They broke up.
Big fan of him.
Lena Dunham has gone through like a lot of tough. She's been having a tough couple of years.
Exhibit A.
Well, anyway,
I stole that from Theo Von, but
well, no, I'm just saying the working on the thing that speaks to you.
But what happened was she was too fresh. It got big too quick.
Right, yeah.
And then she didn't have the resilience, and who knows? I'm completely speculating, making all that up. Who knows?
That's a good support for your argument. That time that feels like a waste of time is actually the thing that's preparing you for later on.
It might have nothing to do with Lena Dunham. I don't know anything about where she's at or what she's up to. But the broader point is, it's good to be armed with all that as you're gonna make whatever you want to make, and have that confidence. It's sort of like the way your personality develops in life. Like you don't want to peak early, you know. Like you want to go through a phase where you're kind of beaten down and figuring things out, and then when you fully kind of get to a point where you feel like a little bit more developed, you at least have gone through a point where you had to put in the work of self-development. Same thing with creative development. You put in this time where you're doing things that maybe you don't feel are as fully representative of you, but they're helping you build skills so that when you do want to do the thing you want to do, you're fully equipped to put as much into it, you know, creatively. Like if you had to make content or if you had to make film editing for some other corporate business for years and years and years, or do it for such and such project, or be an assistant and do these things, and then when you get to your own film, you are armed to the teeth with tools to express yourself.
Yeah, Sam Esmail edited porn for a long time. The
Who was
guy
that?
who made Mr. Robot, and Homecoming. I think
Was that a
that's what it's
porn or
called.
was that a
No, he's a huge.
spelled with an O or a C?
He's a huge deal now.
An O or a U, sorry.
He spent a long time time doing that.
Editing porn?
And then, but he was ready when he got his shot. He was very ready to like. He's like, I know what I want to do. I know how I want to do it, and like, I don't really give a shit about what you think.
Right.
But then also, I think you get
Is
prepared.
that why Mr. Robot is all filmed from the back? I never saw it, but interesting.
You never saw Mr. Robot?
No.
Oh. Mr. Robot was interesting. Can I tell you my theory on Mr. Robot?
Sure, I haven't seen it. But won't
It
mean
came out. Oh, so it's this really dark show about sort of like these anarchist programmers who everything that's in fashion to talk about now with like the one. It's sort of if Occupy Wall Street like became programmers and decided to like do something about it. But that's like the vibe of the show. It's sort of dark and anxious and sort of very like nihilistic and whatever. And it hit. It went on, I think, USA. I think it was USA. Characters Welcome. It was this like bright sunny network, and they put on this dark show, and it was so successful that it turned the entire network around. Now they went from focusing on like blue sky stuff to like dark stuff. That's how successful it was. It hit so hard.
this was on FX.
No, it was on USA.
Oh.
It hit so hard, and it hit exactly when Hillary was running against Trump in 2016. And I remember thinking at the time, like, it's so weird. Like, we're all preparing for like this feminist wave. It's this amazing moment where like finally, like this gross guy is being put in his place. He's being rejected. The good guy Hillary Clinton is gonna win, and like
Good gal.
Yeah, it's like we had Barack Obama, now we have Hillary. Like we're entering this like beautiful phase of America. Why is this thing that's so dark resonating so deeply with such a huge audience? And I think it was because the truth was we were not entering this phase. People understood sort of instinctively there were a lot of issues we still need to deal with as a country. That goes back to my point. Sam Esmail wrote about this thing that spoke to him at this time, and I'm sure people were telling him this is too dark, this doesn't fit. What do you like? This is wrong. But he followed his instincts, and he's a great artist, and he was right, and it spoke to people. That's why I like Mr. Robot.
You ever have those moments where you're like indulge in a specific thought about like what's going on in the world, and you come to discover like everybody is thinking that?
Yeah, those are that's the best.
And you're like, everything is so much more universal experientially than I really think.
Yeah.
Like I wonder, even our talks about coming from particular communities and the pressures of going into particular fields over other fields, you know, how many people may react to that, I really don't know.
Yeah.
But there's all these things that we think we're experiencing alone.
Yeah.
And it's just more often than not, like everybody is feeling the same thing at the same time.
And that's the great challenge, I think, of putting stuff out, that vulnerability of like, is this just going to completely thud?
Yeah.
Like this personal thought I have, or is it going to be shared with by other people?
If you're being honest and vulnerable, I guess it can't by definition.
It can't thud?
It can't be, unless, I mean, or the
more
probability that you're going to be fully alone in that feeling is so small.
Yeah, that's true.
I think.
Yeah. You know?
Well,
who knows? That's the scary part.
that's the risk you take.
That's the scary part.
Equal to the love you make.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, that was a good. I think this is a conversation we can really dig into throughout.
That and Face Off. I think we have to go back to Face Off.
Woo!
But more on that later. This was more of a vulnerable expose podcast.
Yeah, I hope this does resonate with people. I hope people have what to say about it and like hearing about it. Because I think we have more to say about it. And it is. I mean, it's a little embarrassing because you don't want to expose your own privilege and you don't want to sound ungrateful and disconnected. But if it's what your life is and what you're dealing with, it's important to share. It's important to talk about.
Yeah, I guess everything can be validated. It's fine to discuss things in their proper context with their proper perspective.
Right.
Yeah, which hopefully we
just
are
say
striving
perspective. Just do it.
There's many ways. I used to say when I first started Gary Vee, it was perspective. Like ultimately, I was watching an old video of mine, and I'm like, I used to do it like this, like holy shit, like fuck. It was like a little fucking weasel. Then like it got a little more subtle, right? And I was like, perspective. I'm so obsessed with perspective. There's like a million, like fucking horny bunnies, right? Like perspective. Oh boy, Gary, I'm coming on the show. We'll see you soon.
Does he have his own podcast?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like one of his big things. Ask Gary Vee, the Ask Gary Vee show.
I've seen clips. I don't know where it came from. I never know where.
Nobody knows where he came from. He's like a little bit like Agent Smith. He's just like everywhere now, right?
He said, I heard him on an interview. His grandfather spent 10 years in prison.
Yeah, he's from Belarus, and so is my grandfather.
Really?
People say you look just like him.
Bum, 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 ba-da-da-dum, ba-dum.
That's a good place to end it.